My wife and I admit in 2021 we made plans on the very real expectation of financial benefit from the discovery of Knights Templar bells engraved with the name of a Master of Templars. Supported by the initial reception we had received from our antiquities expert and initial beta readers. It was a welcome discovery. A positive outcome was offered, a solution to the costly refurbishment and sustainability of Holywood Church. A silver lining in the grey cloud we had misbought within a web of deception and incompetence. Not so much silver perhaps, but bronze. The area would receive a boost and Scotland would have its historical legend enhanced. Millions of pounds made available not only for us and our agents, but in tax revenue and commercial profit. A reason to visit the area and generate tourist income and public interest. An opportunity for other historians to explore new historical threads and further research. We did not expect the historical community to lift us on their shoulders and carry us through the streets of Edinburgh, offering us the keys to the city, but we did expect a little praise for restoring history to the area, not just history, but celebrity history. In the last video, link given in the description, we give some detail of our research that led to our discovery. In the wake of discovery, we packed up the equipment and building materials in the church, and the children were making their Christmas lists in May. My wife, I affectionately call Digger in deference to her love of archaeology and digging out treasure in charity shops and auctions, had most of the reward for the discovery given away to charity before we'd even had any idea of the discovery's value. Digger was intent on supporting her preferred charitable causes and keeping us poor, well, on the poor side of financially sustainable. After discussions with our antiquities agent, who heaped nothing but praise on our report and our discovery, Digger hurled a few more dozen charities into the mix. Charities I never heard of, or never heard her mentioned before, all to keep us poor but of generous spirit. We looked for a modest new home with space and land. In the wake of nothing but positive reviews of our investigation from antiquity specialists, senior public servant colleagues, local ecclesiastics, legal agents, and the region's museum curator, we had no doubt that reception to our discovery would be nothing but glowing, if not initially sceptical. Skepticism was to be expected. After all, spurious Templar stories proliferated history channels and publication. But one scan of our report and the robustness of the conclusion would speak volumes. Support from the establishment, we thought, was a given. I cashed in my pension. It seemed the right thing to do at the time. We needed a lump sum up front. There were costs to meet. Digger did the same. The one thing we thought that would not be a problem was income for the future. We had discovered probably the most valuable medieval objects outside a museum or private collection. We needed money to offset the cost of research, which had been surprisingly expensive, but not as expensive as the reactive essential maintenance to a building we would never use, or the enhanced security we had and would need to employ to keep the site and the bell safe whilst we found new keepers. The children had outgrown the one-bedroom cottage we had rented. With the church no longer a potential home, we could not wait any longer for a 3-bedroom house, even if it was to be temporary. In 2021, we had a girl aged 6 and a boy aged 10. They were getting older and desperately needed their own space. We knew there would be prejudice from the establishment, particularly academia, but the work we had carried out was thorough. with evidence that provided one inarguable conclusion. We didn't think we'd have any problems. We had carried out an investigation probably as good as it could be for something that occurred nearly 900 years ago. It had been the first time the bells had been inspected in over 100 years, and the first time ever with any kind of detailed forensic collaborative study. No one would be hurt by a revelation, other than perhaps criticism pointed at existing Victorian record, but there again it had not been audited, so no one living was directly at the end of any potential criticism. In 2021, with the first version of our archaeological report produced, our first port of call was the local council's archaeological officer to report the unrecorded archaeology on site. And also we contacted several UK university archaeological leads of my wife's past acquaintance and knowledge, as well as notable scholars and institutions such as Malcolm Barber, recognised as the world's leading expert on the Knights Templar, and the British Museum and National Museum Scotland. The British Museum advised us to contact the Scottish Government's heritage agency, Historic Environment Scotland, as, in their view, it had the resources and the mandate to evaluate our discovery as it was in the national interest. National Museum Scotland also directed us to Historic Environment Scotland and to the local council's archaeological officer, who in turn was directed by the local planning authority to evaluate any significant archaeological find uncovered during development works in the region. Malcolm Barber was kind enough to take our calls and responded to our pleas for assistance and authentication, although he disqualified himself from any critique as he claimed he was not an expert on the foundation of the Templar movement in the UK. Instead, he referred us to two other notable Templar historians. But he was still generous enough to comment on our research, adding his own observation that for the amount of work we had presented, my wife and I actually appeared to be the experts in this particular area. My wife's university connections advised us to contact National Museum Scotland's lead medieval find specialist, who was, in their view, best placed to evaluate and authenticate the find in context of Scottish medieval metalwork. So we sent our archaeological report and asked for assistance. All we approached and received a response from were initially very helpful and agreed to evaluate our find in context that there was very little information on the Holywood site or the Templar Foundation in Scotland. So any new information would be useful. Historic Environment Scotland visited the site in connection with a nearby project and viewed the bells and listened to a brief summary of our findings, promising to take our report away and evaluate the evidence. The council's archaeological officer also agreed to evaluate the report, visit the site within the restrictions of the COVID-19 epidemic, which was occurring at the time. Whereas our prior beta readers, all learned professionals, amateur antiquarians or antiquity specialists, offered praise, confirming we presented evidence that spoke for itself, these new readers, representing the establishment and academic specialists, the potential routes to authoritative authentication for our find, took an unexpected course of action. Well, unexpected to us at the time. It was as if we'd given out a cursed manuscript that rendered the reader either taken from the planet, never to be heard of again, or otherwise filled with witless reasoning, made dumb or incompetent regarding their own specialism. The council's archaeological officer never appeared, did not answer our calls in follow-up, nor provide any feedback on our report. After 4 years of contact with the local council, including a petition to local councillors and the chief executive officer in December 2023, begging the council to show interest in a tremendous discovery for the region, we have yet to have the pleasure of the council's archaeological officer's presence on site, or the officer's appraisal of the archaeology as per their remit. A fact the council refuses to acknowledge. Perverse considering the officer's role and responsibilities, and very odd considering the extraordinary nature of the find. The council's archaeological officer's absence from any prudent consideration of the find became a greater vexation when the officer accused my wife and I in October 2024 of failing to report the find to the council. And even more annoyingly, the officer's negligence and patent avoidance has resulted in Digger and I, my wife, facing a costly legal battle to defend our actions to safeguard unique archaeology and even our liberty, all because the officer chose to bury their head in the sand in the hope they could escape any involvement, when in fact the officer should have been first on the scene. Unexpectedly, in 2021, the council's disinterest was also shared by Historic Environment Scotland, who only responded after their visit and initial interest after we petitioned our local Member of Parliament to intercede. But even then, the government's lead historical agency offered no reasonable explanation why they had not shared the evaluation of our find with Digger and I. The agency did stress it had not dismissed our report, but it claimed it neither had the in-house resources nor the legal obligation to consider it. But considering the enormous significance of the find and the wealth of evidence, this dismissal on a spurious technicality seemed ill-placed considering the impact the discovery had on Scottish history and the region and even the nation. This dismissal by Historic Environment Scotland conflicted with both the British Museum and National Museum Scotland's understanding of the agency's role and even the initial understanding of Historic Environment Scotland's own specialist officers. The two academics, the archaeological curator from National Museum Scotland and a professor of medieval history, a regarded Templar historian, however, did respond. However, the academics found no merit in our investigation whatsoever. Instead of objectively appraising the investigation, they blindly supported the Victorian interpretation of the bells as correct, even though there were incontrovertible problems with it: gross anomalies, blatant contrivances, invention, and obvious misinterpretation. Revealingly, the two academics supported their opinion why we were wrong and the existing view was correct, not with evidence argument, but with invention. Invention so obvious that to this date, absolutely no one, no institution, no academic, no beta reader has ever employed the academics' views to challenge our discovery. And considering the academics were referred by those in academia as the best to consider our discovery, we wondered who else existed to offer a better argument against our discovery. The academics' critique is included in our archaeological report for scrutiny. Simply go to our website and check out the replies for yourself. We will be discussing their responses to this extraordinary find here at Holywood in greater detail in the next video. The perverse behaviour and response to the two academics unfortunately became the measure of the integrity and objectivity of academics and the academically influenced heritage officers concerned with our case here at Holywood. The academics' critique regrettably confirming what we have been told time and time again over the last 5 years. Told by professional historians working in the history and heritage sector. That no leading academic in medieval studies will accept a new historical reveal from non-academics. Only a report written by a regarded scholar will be properly considered, and only then if it does not challenge another academic or fellow antiquarian's work. Regardless how monumental, complete, evidenced, and compelling the reveal is, no academic will agree with it. Unfortunately, all the two academics actually contributed to the discovery was the confirmation of this abhorrent academic philosophy of intellectual bigotry and analytical blindness. But also their responses revealed something telling. Through an absence of any supportable or intelligent counter-argument, They confirmed our conclusions were robust enough to withstand any seed of doubt any prejudiced academic may attempt to cast on our discovery. Because these reviewing academics, representing academia as the best, were forced to employ patent falsity to counter it. It regrettably also confirmed the delinquency of academia in the objective understanding of history, that academics would rather dismiss even a consideration of better understanding, all to safeguard their own fossilized record and their own intellectual vanity, something we will be discussing in greater detail in later videos. With our first attempts to gain authentication for the bells dashed, not under the weight of intellectual challenge and scrutiny, but from ridiculous prejudice and evasion, our adventure moved from discovery to dilemma, skirmishing for 5 years with a delinquent local authority, academia and the Scottish Government, principally with Historic Environment Scotland, seeking their surrender to prudent and professional behaviour for the benefit of the public, hoping reality would sink in, that it must understand our discovery would not disappear unless it could disavow it with evidence and supportable counter-argument to question it. We hope to convince Historic Environment Scotland support would be a better strategy than obstruction. It is a battle of reason we have lost, leaving the law courts or our appeal to the public as our only course of action. All my wife and I wanted was the church to become a family home for our children and their pets. We love history and the Scottish countryside. We love books and isolation. And the church was a perfect setting for an enormous library and quiet enjoyment of Scottish life. We had little money, no opportunity for a mortgage, and the church was all we could afford after years of renting. We had big dreams, and we worked hard to generate enough monthly income to create a home out of the unwanted, to repurpose the discarded. I also had a selfish reason to build a home in this redundant former place of worship. I write about Scottish medieval history, historical fiction, centred around the Scottish borders, with my characters based on an unyielding Scottish and border spirit. I thought the experience of being here, beneath the presence of 2 16th century bells, in the centre of ancient spiritual ground, could only bring inspiration. But with a discovery we never expected nor planned for, and the extraordinary nature of the archaeological find, a home this church can never be. My last book of historical fiction was published in 2021, a novel specially written to help another passionate member of the public safeguarding history on her land against many obstructions. But her own story has become even more bizarre than any fiction I could conjure up from my imagination. More so when you learn about the strange visits to the church, accusations of landowner corruption, Masonic intervention, and strange agents that appear and disappear. It reads like a plot from a conspiracy thriller, which is perhaps appropriate fodder for a novelist. Regrettably, from 2021, my wife and I have repurposed our lives away from homemaking and storytelling to fight and save Scotland's own Knights Templar legacy from Scotland herself. Not Scotland's people, not those passionate souls who care for their ancestors' legacy every day, so the country remains a worthy place to visit, to live, to work, to look at in awe at heritage landscapes within a unique culture fostered over years of Celtic, Nordic and Germanic influence, but against the malevolence of Scottish bureaucracy and academia as a whole. We only ever ask for a fair and objective evaluation. That has been denied. In the next video, given in the link attached to the description, I will take you a little deeper into the academic response to our discovery. If you did not already know, there is a universal problem concerning academia, looking down its nose at any thought, research or work made outside its metaphorical walls. This means it either ignores research outside its own creation or will invariably dismiss it with often unsubstantiated argument, as is the case with the Knights Templar Bells of Holywood. As ever, I ask you to like this video and subscribe to our channel and sign our petition accessed through our website. Please engage with us either through the comments to this video or directly with us via email through our website. My wife and I have no problem being proved wrong about the bells, but unless there's any reasonable argument presented to dismiss the discovery, then we will fight on, exposing the establishment's deceit and vanity. In the meantime, buy me a coffee in the link below. Buy our book, the link is on our website. Read our blog to understand who we are and why we are fighting. We desperately need support to promote our case in the media and raise funds for judicial review. And I suppose I'll see you next time, I hope.